All right, here we go into the big picture plan for our cross country season coming up in the fall. So I gave you this big picture plan. It just had the cross country season attached to it, since big picture plan is pretty much the whole entire year. So I'm not going to worry about track. I don't want to think about track right now, but I am going to be thinking about cross country so that we are well prepared and so that we get to the end of the season, as injury free as possible and at our peak by the time we get into this green area here. So this is kind of what the big picture plan looks like. Some of you said that you've seen this stuff before, and that's awesome. So I'll just kind of break this down a little bit for you so that you can understand it a little bit more. So if I had this printed out for you, you can write your name down there. Chronological age is pretty much just your age, training age, how many years you've been training for. If you remember what your disc personality type is, go ahead and put it there, and then you can kind of put your goals in here, just like in a couple words, so it really sticks out. Excuse me, to you. So our macro cycle. So we're going to go through cycles here. Our macro cycle is pretty much our big cycle. That's going to be our season. So the cross country season, which is going to last from the beginning of June all the way to the middle part of November, for hopefully for many of you. Then we break it down into our months, so we have June through November, and then below that's our mesocycles. And I'll go through our mesocycles in a second here, but pretty much the first 2 weeks is going to consist of our first mesocycle. That's kind of basically getting back into it, getting into the routine of running again. Our second mesocycle is going to be the largest mesocycle, and that's just based on the 14-day plan that I have. So it's going to consist of 14 different plans that will kind of ease into us again. And then once we get into about August, we'll get into our third mesocycle. So 3 mesocycles that kind of go through for the summer training. And then based on that, the phase, the first week, where it says trans, is just basically the transition phase, just kind of transitioning back into the routine like I mentioned. And then for the next 12 weeks, we will go into the general prep phase, which is leading up to our first meet at SUNY Poly, the first weekend that you come back to school. And then down below that is the microcycles. That's pretty much just weeks. So week 1 through 13 up until our first meet, you'll have about 12 weeks of training on your own, which consists of the general prep and the summer training. Down below that, a lot of kind of scientific terms here. Basically, pretty much these numbers are saying, where our peak is and where like our priority is of what type of training we're doing. So it's kind of backward from priority, where 1 is priority, but in this peaking index, 5 is going to mean the highest, or like the most important, or where we're peaking at for that. So aerobic threshold is basically our base general endurance training, or aerobic endurance. So you can see how throughout the whole entire summer, it's going to be at a 5, and that's pretty much what we're going to be concentrating the majority of that on, so that when we get into the season, we can start increasing and more so of our higher intensity stuff and slowly decrease that aerobic need. Lactate threshold, that's kind of getting into our aerobic capacity, or like our threshold, getting to where we can start accumulating lactic acid and kind of going through that whole cycle there. So we're really not concerned with it the first few weeks. We start to increase it just a little bit, and I'll show you what that means in our weekly plan. But then that way we kind of hit our peak by the first couple of weeks in the season, and then we start to slow that down a little bit. So this is one of the things that we really have to be careful of: increasing it slowly, peaking, and then decreasing it, and not trying to make our easy runs hard or things like that. So it's all going to be in the purpose behind staying injury free the best we can. Then we got VO2 max, which, as you can see, they're all 1. So we are not going to be doing real high intensity VO2 max stuff. There might be something like those 400s that you might have seen. Okay, but again, too, we're 1. That's like very, very minimal what we're going to be concentrating on. And then as we get into the season, as you see in the specific prep phase, we start to increase that so that we're really high in the intensity when we get into the nitty gritty part of the season. And that's kind of the same thing with going down the list also. Also, you notice here too, strength endurance and muscular endurance. So strength endurance, we're working more so on, as you can kind of see, like the higher reps type of thing. We're more so worried about form and mechanics and the quality of the lifts, so that we can get to the season with no injuries. Okay, because if we try to lift heavy and we don't have the proper form or the proper base, okay, to back us up, it's going to deteriorate us, and we're actually going to get injured because of it. So we're more so focused a lot on the summer training with that strength endurance, nothing on that muscular endurance, and then we'll kind of flip-flop them as we go into the season a little bit more. And then down below here are miles per week. So if you were on the 50 mile per week plan, again, 50 was your peak. That will be like the week before our first meet. There's that slow increase. So as you can see down here, this was not on your sheet because I had forgotten to kind of pencil this in. But you can kind of see the green here is your volume. So you'll slowly increase, and then you go through a recovery phase, then you'll slowly increase again, recovery phase, slowly increase, recovery phase, and then slowly increase again. And the reason why TBD on these in the season is going to be all based on if you do this training. Okay, I have a vision and a kind of a map of where I want us to be, but it's really not going to do any justice if you don't keep this up, because it's going to get very difficult in the season if you don't have this mileage to back you up. So the green again is our volume, so it's going to increase slowly, decrease 1 week, increase slowly, and so forth. As we get more so in the season, you can see this last little dip. It will start to decrease more and more as we get into the season, because what's going to happen is this blue is our intensity. And so pretty much our intensity is fairly low. As we start to get into the middle part to end part of the summer training, it will start to increase more. And then as it increases more, again, too, going back to our VO2 max, that starts to increase more as well. So they'll kind of like cross the intensity and the volume. So the volume will be a little bit lower and intensity will be a little bit higher as we get into the nitty-gritty part of the season. So that's the big picture. Again, you can look at this again, kind of go through it, just to kind of see what I plan on doing for the season, especially in our specific prep phase, which is 4 weeks long. That consists of two 14-day cycles. Then our pre-competition phase, so really when we're starting to ramp up that VO2 max, and we have 2 meets in that realm as well. And then our main competition phase, which is going to be 3 weeks long, hopefully, where we have our NEACs, and then a week off, and then Atlantic Regionals. And then for those that are going to be doing track, a nice recovery phase in here as well. So that's the big picture plan.